new school year, and we're going to start on a more of a reflective note this year as we prepare to launch into the school year. We're going to end with our celebrations, but we thought it would be important to acknowledge that as a community we suffered a significant loss this summer. In August, we unexpectedly lost Veritas ESL teacher, Miss Denise White. Miss White was a teacher in the Holyoke Public Schools for over 10 years, and prior to her transition to Veritas, she was a classroom teacher at Kelly and spent some time at Donahue School. Mrs. White was loved by her peers, but most importantly by her students. Mrs. White was loving, caring, and a very passionate teacher who believed all her students could succeed. This has profoundly impacted our students who were touched by her, and a powerful reminder of the enormous influence that educators have on the children of the Holyoke Public Schools. At this time, I would ask that the principal of Veritas School, Mr. Rue Rattray, and Mr. Terrell White, Denise's husband, join me on stage for a special recognition and tribute. And please bring your family with you, Mr. White.
One of the things that Terrell had asked us to do to honor Denise's memory was to use the books that she had collected over a career and a lifetime to create a library space in our school. To begin that, we have two things that we would like to present to you to dedicate the space. The first is a plaque, and it reads, "This library is dedicated to the memory of Denise White. Her books and her work serve as the heart of the library. Her dedication to her craft and the students she served will always be an inspiration to this library, this school, and this community." The second thing we wanted to present was the book that represented Denise's work as a teacher and a colleague that would serve as a seed of the library. But the problem was there was no one like her. In all the time that I've worked in schools, I never worked with anyone like her. And we searched, but we couldn't find a book that would adequately do justice to her memory. So what we wanted to do over the course of this year is to write one. So, this book. This book is where we want to record the stories, the lessons, and the guidance that Denise gave us so she should continue to guide our school and our community for years to come. There are many students and families and colleagues and other adults who'd like to add to this book. So if it's okay with you, we'd like to keep this book at the school so we can record those stories. Please know that Denise's teaching will always guide us, and you will always be a part of our family and our school. Thank you.
I really appreciate this, guys. It's a great honor. Denise was an amazing person. She was an amazing woman. And I know not all of you had the opportunity to get to know her, but the few of you that did were really lucky. You know, the people that spent time with her at Veritas, at Kelly, and at Donahue. She invested a lot. And for those of you that didn't know her well, I just want to share a few things, and I won't keep you long because she told me about Convocation, and I know how long it is, and I want to keep it short and sweet, but I do want to say a few things. First, about the service. I want to give you guys all a round of applause. guys in this room service a district that is very unique. There's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of people that are looking for safe housing. There are a lot of people that are looking for a lot of things. And they bring all of those things with them to school every day. And you guys have to service that. And we spoke often about cause and effect. And oftentimes she felt like people looked at the effect, but they didn't look for the cause, that root cause of why they're doing these things, or why they're acting the way that they're acting, or why they're responding the way that they're responding. But she met all of that with compassion. So I would ask you to act with a bit of compassion. I would also, thank you. I'd also like to talk about the sacrifice that you guys all make. You know, there were days where we had serious conversations about how much money she was spending, investing in books and doing things for the district. And sometimes there were difficult conversations, but she did it anyway, in spite of how I felt. But the more I connected with the class, the more I connected with the students, I started to understand why she was so connected and so invested. Because these kids deserve it. You know, they really deserve it. They're children, and they don't have any way to change their circumstances. But they try to exist in them every day. And they come to school and they try to do the best that they can. And I appreciate you guys for dealing with that, because there are going to be some hard days ahead for you guys. I know there were, because she talked about many of those hard days herself. But I appreciate all the people in this room investing 180 days. You get 185 of those for yourself, but I want you to focus on those 180 days. Because these kids need it more than most. And I'd also like to talk a little bit about her ability to find the human connection. These are kids, but they're people. And they're going to be older a lot longer than they're going to be younger. And they're going to remember some of the people in this room. And some of these people in this room are going to give them what they need to be successful in life. They're going to come back and they're going to talk about the Barcelos. They're going to talk about the Littles. They're going to talk about all of these individuals. And it's going to be important. It's going to be important for them, and I hope that it's important to you. There were days that she had to do difficult things. She kept food in her desk, because sometimes there were kids that didn't have food in their homes. And sometimes kids can be mean, especially in middle school, but throughout school. And there were times where people were neglected, and they didn't always come to school looking their best, or often smelling their best. But she would keep travel-sized bars of soap in her room. And she would say, hey, why don't you go into the bathroom, and why don't you clean yourself up a little bit so you feel a little bit about yourself, so people aren't picking on you, you know? So your day is going to be a little bit easier. So those are some of the things that she used to do, you know, maybe unbeknownst to other people, but that's why her kids loved her. And she also understood that children don't learn from people they don't like. So she became a great actress as well. Because I guarantee each one of you are going to have some students that you just don't care for. And she had some as well. But hopefully they never knew it. So be great actors. Never let them know your frustration. They will only know what you show them. Show them love. Show them compassion. Because they may not always get it when they leave your building. They may not always get a meal when they leave your building. You may not know what's going on with them, but talk to them. They're people. Show interest in them, and they'll show interest in you. It'll make your days a little bit simpler, a little bit smoother, for them and for you. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge you to be your best selves. For 180 days, for 8 hours a day, be your best self. Bring your best self to the classroom. And if you do, those of you that knew my wife or spent time with my wife will see the benefit of that action, because those kids loved her, and they continue to love her. And I just spoke to children out in the hallway that I haven't seen since they were in her classroom, and they remembered who I am. But they remember me because they remember her. All of those things are important, guys. So I know you guys have a big challenge ahead of you. You know, this district is in receivership, but you guys have to be the change engine. You guys have to do it because they're not in the front of the classroom, you guys are. Take that opportunity and run with it. Appreciate you all, thank you.
I'd ask that everybody please stand. We're going to observe a moment of silence for Ms. White, and then we're going to be led in the national anthem and the Pledge of Allegiance by our students.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streamed, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Thank you to Mr. Todd and our students. As we prepare to open school on Tuesday, much of the enhancements in our schools would not be possible without the support of the city or the mayor of Holyoke. With his support, we have expanded our dual language program, allocated resources for restorative justice, made significant facility upgrades at Morgan, Kelly, and Sullivan, and it helped us reach 85% of our classrooms having access to central, or not central air conditioning, but air conditioning. He also been a strong proponent and cheerleader for our proposal to build two state-of-the-art middle schools in Holyoke. At this time, I would like to invite Mayor Alex Morris to the podium to share a few thoughts.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for that introduction, Dr. Drake. And I did want to start as well by acknowledging the contributions of Denise White to our school system over so many years. And Terrell, thank you for your powerful words and message to everyone here today. And I don't think I could have said anything better than you have already said today. And I know Denise isn't with us physically today, but I know she's in the hearts and minds of every single teacher and every single person in this room, and her legacy will continue to live on in each classroom in the Holyoke Public Schools. And so thank you for sharing her with us for so many years here in Holyoke. And I do have a posthumous proclamation on her behalf. And on behalf of the citizens of Holyoke, I, Mayor Alex Morris, do hereby proclaim August 27, 2019, the first day of school next week, as Mrs. Denise White Day in the city of Holyoke. And I urge all citizens to remember the positive impact she had on her students. Mrs. White taught in the Holyoke Public Schools for over 10 years. She was loved by her peers, but most importantly, she was loved by her students. She was a loving, caring, and passionate teacher who believed that all students can, should, and will succeed. And she is and will be terribly missed in our community. In witness whereof, I learned to set my hand and cause the official seal of the city of Holyoke to be affixed. So thank you again for being here. Thank you for sharing. And with oftentimes, sad subjects, it's on to us to turn that into celebration and transfer that energy into doing all we can for our students to continue the message of Terrell on to the next 180 days. And I know many of you work much more than 180 days. So I want to thank you for all you did over this past summer and to arrive next Tuesday here in the Holyoke Public Schools. And yes, we've made progress in the public schools, but we still have a lot of challenges still before us. And every data point, every outcome that improves the narrative we say about the Holyoke Public Schools is, of course, a testament to leadership, but most importantly, it's a testament to each and every one of you here that is interacting with kids and our students on a daily basis. Terrell said it, we have a challenging community. We have students that come from backgrounds where their parents didn't have the opportunity to graduate from high school or go on to college, coming from neighborhoods where there may be high violence or drugs, coming from families that may not value education as much as your family once did. But to welcome a student into their classroom, regardless of their lived experience, and seeing public education as our cities and our society's greatest equalizer is something that the public schools have done for generations. Neither of my parents had the opportunity to graduate from the Holyoke Public Schools. Both dropped out. My mom got pregnant with my oldest brother when she was 17 and lived in Whiting Farms, and my dad dropped out soon after. Growing up, I remember they always wanted me to have the opportunities that they didn't have. And I'll do a quick shout out. I was lucky enough to go to Morgan Elementary School. I spent 8 years there, the preschool program for 2 years, and then kindergarten through 5th grade. Then I had the opportunity to go to the beautiful building at that school for the beautiful part was a joke, but that was a great school. And of course, I'm proud of 2007 graduate of Holyoke High School right here. And to think that the teachers that I had at Holyoke Public Schools are still teaching today. And it takes a special person, special people in general to continue dedicating your life to the Holyoke Public Schools. And I think all of you know this by now, but teaching here in Holyoke, communities like Holyoke, you're making far more of a difference in someone's life than you would if you were teaching elsewhere. We know it's more challenging, we know it's more difficult, we know some resources sometimes come out of your pockets, but I want you to know as mayor, we value the work that you do, we value public school teachers, and our community and our country wouldn't be able to move forward without you. So on behalf of the city, as your mayor here in the public schools, we stand ready to continue to support the facilities in our schools. Obviously, we're pleased with the upgrades at Kelly, Sullivan, and Morgan, and I also just want to reiterate the importance of providing adequate middle school spaces for all of our kids in the Holyoke Public Schools. We haven't had a new school constructed in Holyoke since 1989, which also happens to be the year I was born. I don't want to make anyone feel old, I just want to point that out. But I think it undercuts the message that kids in Holyoke, students in Holyoke, deserve the same facilities of kids in more affluent and more wealthy communities here in Western Mass and across our state. And we have an opportunity in November to take that message to people all across Holyoke to make sure that this is an investment in our children, in our future, and making the argument that we shouldn't just care about our own kids, but care about all kids in the city of Holyoke. So again, congratulations on the success you've helped us get to today, and I look forward to working with you over next year as well. Thank you.
Okay, one of my favorite traditions every year is recognizing our staff for their years of service. We want to acknowledge those that have selflessly dedicated themselves to the children of this fine city, even with the many changes at the school and at the district level. So I want everybody to start by standing. Stand if you work for the Holyoke Public Schools. I hope that's almost everybody in this room. Stay standing if you have worked in the Holyoke Public Schools for 5 or more years. Stay standing if you have been working in the Holyoke Public Schools for 10 or more years. Okay. Stay standing if you've been working in the Holyoke Public Schools for 15 or more years. Stay standing if you work in the Holyoke Public Schools for 20 or more years. Take a look at these people. Stay standing if you've been working in the Holyoke for 25 or more years. Today's saying if you're working in the local schools for 35 more years. Gifts that have been donated by Holyoke businesses. All right, so if you've been 36 or more years, stay standing. Are you using that? Okay. How about 37 or more years? Okay. 38 or more years. All right, this is tough. This is a tough group. 39 or more years. All right. You get a gift card to Barnes & Noble here. All right. Okay, so 39 years right here. Come on, actually, what you're leaving. You want to know? Okay. So how many years? 38. Okay. 39 or more years. Okay. 40 or more years. Okay. still sitting, but 41 or more years, 42 or more years, 43 or more years. Okay, Liz LaFon. All right, let's see here. Okay. All right. 44 more years, 45 more years. Keep going. 46 or more years. 47, 48, 49, 50. Keep going. 51. When I told Roberta that she might get a gift card today, her first response is, "Do I have to take Larry with me to dinner?" For those of you that don't know, Larry is her husband. All right. Congratulations to Roberta, to Liz. That is impressive. If anybody here plans, if anybody can match that, I think we could do more than a gift card. What are you looking at? I don't want to know what you said, so you're not going to have the microphone. But in all seriousness, to those folks that have been standing for 30 plus years, you really are a testament. Your resilience is really a testament to all. It is an example of people who have dedicated themselves selflessly to our students for a long time. So please look up to these folks. And Roberta has more energy than 99.9% of the educators I've ever worked with. So please give her a big round of applause. And I do want to acknowledge the businesses. Slancha had given us a gift card. Delaney House gave us a gift card in Barnes & Noble. So we want to thank them for their, and feel free to patronize those services. So as we enter the upcoming year, we are entering a year where we want to deepen the work that we have started as a school system. For the first time in multiple years, we have not opened new schools or new programs. We are doubling down on the efforts begun to provide our students with dynamic pathways that will lead all students to succeed in college, career, and in community leadership. The cover slide photo is of graduation this spring. You can see one of our graduates waving to the crowd. And it is a reminder that our vision is to have every student graduate from the Holyoke schools with an additional credential that provides them for college and career options. The attributes we are looking for from all graduates include the ability to effectively communicate, to think critically, engage productively as community leaders, and to act mindfully. So what does this deeper work look like for this school year? Consistent with the past and in alignment with our individual school improvement plans, we are going to ground our efforts in only four priorities: supporting powerful instruction, developing effective management and operations in our schools, meaningfully engaging with family and community, and strengthening the professional culture in our schools. At the center of the priorities is an overarching focus on ensuring that our actions are impactful, resulting in equitable access and inclusion for all students. In an effort to more powerfully explain the strategies linked to these priorities, I want to do so through the stories of our students and our families. Although these stories highlight specific schools and students, there are countless stories that each of you have about your own schools, your own experiences. As I share these stories, I'm sure many more children will come to mind. So this student started at Holyoke High School North as a sophomore, and she struggled, she was significantly behind academically. While her social adjustment was smooth, she struggled with a shift in instructional expectation level at the high school. In class, dedicated educators worked tirelessly to intervene where she had unfinished learning and reteach material that she did not grasp. Beyond the tiered support within the classroom, teachers provided her with extra tutoring and coaching so that she could attain grade level proficiency. By the time her senior year rolled around, she was an honors English student, a counseling office teaching assistant, and a varsity athlete. Her innate ability to connect with people emerged, and she was recognized as a leader by both teachers and students. This student graduated in June with plans to pursue a major in criminal justice at AIC, and just 2 weeks ago found out that she received a full tuition scholarship as one of the founding students in AIC's community internship program. It is this type of tiered academic, social, emotional, and behavior support systems that we must strengthen across HBS. One that includes a strong core learning experience for all students in every classroom, all the time. Opportunities for students who have unfinished learning to get the core plus some more, targeted classroom-based remediation, and an infrastructure for students with urgent needs to receive the core plus even more intensive intervention. We are aggressively working with schools to provide the materials, training, and personnel to ensure that these systems exist universally across all our schools. Next, we want to highlight an 8th grade student from last year at Donahue School. Let's hear it for Donahue over there. So we strongly believe that to increase academic outcomes and meet the diverse needs of all students, we need to customize their experience. So this photo, as I said, is of an 8th grade student from last year at Donahue School who entered the previous school year significantly off track. The school team at Donahue determined that the arts, music in particular, could prove to be an effective path for him to succeed in school. They partnered with our instrumental teacher, Miss Wade, to connect him to the cello. The young man thrived, turned on to an instrument that he had never played before. By the end of the year, the school staff rallied to purchase a cello for him, and he was performing at city events, and most importantly, he did a 180 as a student, and is now inspired to continue this musical pursuit throughout high school. This is the power of pathways, whether it be arts, robotics, environmental science, sports, criminal justice, and or learning Puerto Rican history. They ignite and motivate our students to achieve at the highest levels. Pathways are not singularly about new schools or programs, but experiences in schools and classrooms that are relevant, culturally responsive, and capture a student's passion so that they can perform at the highest level. I challenge all of us in this room to find each student's cello in order to meet their academic, social, emotional, and behavioral needs. Our family and community efforts continue to be a critical aspect of our turnaround. Schools have developed targeted plans to strengthen two-way communication with families, focused on how families can support their child's development. This photo is of Kelly. Kelly's family night this spring, where families had the opportunity to participate in real-world applications of math alongside their children. All of this was facilitated with educators and Boys and Girls Club staff who coach families on how this learning might look outside of the school context. Children and teachers taught parents how to play math games and everyone left with the materials to replicate the activities at home. A bodega was also set up with items from local markets, and families were given fake currency to purchase items with their child. This is precisely the kind of experiences we want for our families with their child's school. Relevant, practical, and highlighted by discussion and dialogue between families and our talented educators about their child's learning. Finally, aspects of our professional culture have to be improved. Our annual district survey tells us that educators want more of an active voice and more opportunities to work together in order to improve student learning. This picture is an example of the positive outcomes that are realized when a collective of thoughtful and innovative educators come together to make change. A team of OTs, therapists, teachers, administrators, and paraprofessionals from Lawrence School created the sensory walk in a frequently used hallway at the school. The interactive walk was designed to help students self-regulate and de-escalate through movement so they might be more available for learning. The walk is now a fixture at Lawrence School as an integral part of the social, emotional, and behavioral response systems at the school. So much more is possible when we unleash our educators to provide solutions to the most complex problems and challenges at each of our schools. So as we work to employ these strategies this year, we must do so with a relentless commitment to equity. With the word equity being thrown around by so many people as a popular buzzword, I want to center us on how HPS defines the word. For us, equity is about reducing predictability about who succeeds and fails. It's got to be about interrupting practices that negatively impact our most marginalized students. And most of all, it's got to be about cultivating the gifts of every student in our system for all 180 days, as Terrell spoke to us about just moments ago. To ensure that we uphold that standard, we have challenged every school in HPS to ask the following questions about every decision that they make. While I don't like to read off of slides, these questions are so critical that they must be read out loud. We must commit ourselves for the 2019-20 school year to repeatedly ask how the decisions we make at all levels of the organization ensure that students and families and staff who need the most get the most, incorporate the voices of those impacted, especially those who have not been heard historically, promote access and inclusion for all students, families, and staff, especially for those who are not being heard, and finally reflect and embrace the greater diversity of our students and our families. I want us to keep asking ourselves these questions. It doesn't mean that we'll be perfect overnight, but we have to push and challenge ourselves with every decision that we make to ask these four questions. Our keynote will delve further into this equity work and examine what this looks like in our schools and our classrooms. So as I close my comments, I want to thank you all for your commitment to our students and the energy that you are bringing into the school year. And I hope to hear that energy as we leave today with our chants. It is my sincerest belief that everyone in this room has the tremendous privilege and the awesome opportunity to profoundly alter the life trajectory of the students that we serve. Our students will now challenge us to seize this incredible opportunity as we enter the upcoming school year through a theatrical representation of Kobe Yamada's inspirational children's book, What Do You Do with a Chance? I'll get out of your way here. Thank you.
show up. It acted like it knew me, as if it wanted something. I didn't know why it was here. What do you do with a chance, I wondered. It fluttered around me. It brushed up against me. It circled me as if it wanted me to grab it. I started to reach for it, but I wasn't sure and pulled back. And so, it flew away. I thought about it a lot. I wish I had taken my chance. I realized I had wanted it, but I still didn't know if I had the courage. When another chance came around, I wasn't so sure, but I decided to try. I went to reach for it, but I missed and fell. I was embarrassed. I felt foolish. It seemed like everyone was looking at me. I decided I never wanted to feel this way again. So after that, whenever a chance came along, I ignored it. And the more I ignored them, the less they came around. Until one day, I noticed that I hadn't seen a chance in quite a while. It was as if they had all disappeared. I started to worry. What if I don't get another chance? I know I acted like I didn't care, but the truth was, I did. I still wanted to take a chance, but I was afraid, and I wasn't sure if I would ever be brave enough. Then I thought, maybe I don't have to be brave all the time. Maybe I just need to be brave a little while at the right time. I realized it was up to me. I promised myself that if I ever got another chance, I wasn't going to hold back. If I got another chance, I was going to be ready. Then one seemingly ordinary day, I saw something shining far off in the distance. Is it possible? I hoped. Could this be my chance? I had to find out. I ran as hard and as fast as I could towards it. I don't know how to explain it, but the second I let go of my fears, I was full of excitement. It wasn't that I was no longer afraid, but now my excitement was bigger than my fear. As I got closer, I could see that this was a really huge chance. But this time, I was ready. As it came by, I reached out and grabbed it. I held on with all my might. It felt so good to soar, to fly, to be free. And now I know that when I hold back, I miss out. And I don't want to miss out.
There's so many things to do, to see, to discover. So what do you do with a chance? Because it just might be the start of something incredible.
It is now my privilege to introduce our keynote for today. Mr. Mirko Chardin is the founding head of schools of the Putnam Avenue Upper School in Cambridge, Massachusetts. While Mr. Chardin's work has involved all areas of school management and student support, his greatest experience and passion revolves around culturally connected teaching, recruiting and retaining educators of color, restorative practice, and school culture. He's also a race, diversity, and cultural proficiency facilitator and leadership coach for the Aspire Institute at Boston University's New Wheelock College of Human Development. He is an alumni trustee at Wheaton College and is an active hip-hop artist and author. He recently released the album Unhealthy Societies and co-authored the soon-to-be-released book Social Justice in the Hands of Educators. Please welcome Mr. Mirko Chardin to the Holyoke Public Schools.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm a middle school principal. Y'all gonna have to do better than that. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I think y'all are still gonna have to do a little better than that. This is a celebration. It's the launch of our next school year. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. That sounds good. That sounds really good. Now, I will just jump right into it. This talk is entitled Going Beyond Access for Equity, because access alone is not equity. Access alone is not social justice. This is entitled Going Beyond Access because if we were able to provide all of the patients in our country with access to all the pharmaceuticals, that alone would not provide healing. We would need to know what their patient history was. We need to know about allergies. We need to know about who they were as individuals so we can create care plans that really speaks to them in about how we will address the circumstances that are going on, within their lives. Now, for the sake of this, there are 3 guiding questions that I will share with you that will help us get to this piece about going beyond access. And those 3 guiding questions are we valuing impact in and through the lives of our kiddos more than we're valuing our adult intentions? That's question number 1. Question number 2, can all of our learners see themselves reflected in the work? Can they see themselves reflected in the content? Can they see themselves reflected in our classroom spaces? Simply when they walk into our buildings or our rooms, do they see images of them up on the wall? Do they see images of women? Do they see images of brown people? Or do they see images of folks who don't look like them? And is the work authentically relevant? Relevant to who? Relevant to the learners who are before you right now. Our world changes at a very fast pace, and particularly due to technology and due to social media. And what was cool or relevant to last year's class is not going to be what's relevant to the class that we service this year. Do we know about them enough to be able to ensure that the work that we're presenting them with is actually important, to their lives? Now, in order to really expand upon this, I'm going to share with you a story, my story. And I'm going to do that as a way of conveying to you that for me, this is not about theories. It's not just about research, but it's about lived experience. I know that if we do this equity and social justice work well, that it leads to the transformation of lives, because that's what's happened in my experience. Now, before I get going on this, I will need your help. As often as I have the opportunity to share my story and to share about myself, it is extremely intimidating to share my personal journey and all my business with people who I've never met before. When I ask you this question, this is my way of letting you know that I'm getting a little shaky up here and I need your strength to carry me. I'm going to ask you the question, can I proceed? And when I ask that question, I'll need you to affirm me with strength, yes indeed. Can we try that out? Can I proceed? Yes indeed. Can I proceed? Yes indeed. One more time, can I proceed? Yes indeed. Okay. Now, I'm going to share with you a poem that I think encapsulates the world in which my journey has taken place and is very relevant for the world that we live in today. And it's entitled Flag Salute. It's by the Harlem Renaissance poet Esther Popple. I pledge allegiance to the flag that dragged him naked through the muddy streets, a feeble-minded black boy, in the charge, supposed assault upon an aged woman. Of the United States of America, 1 mile they dragged him like a sack of meal, a rope around his neck, a bloody ear left dangling by the hand of Nordic youth, a boy of only 17, into the republic for which he stands. And then they hanged that body to a tree below the window of the county judge, whose howls and pleading for that battered human flesh were stifled by the brutish howls of men and boys and women with their babes, brought out to see the bloody spectacle of murder in the style of 33. One nation, indivisible. To make the tale complete, they built the fire. What matters is the stuff they burnt was flesh and bone and hair and reeking gasoline. With liberty and justice, they cut the ropes and bits and passed them out for souvenirs amongst the men and boys. The teeth, no doubt, on golden chains will hang about the favored necks of sweethearts, wives, daughters, mothers, sisters, babes too, for all. Can I proceed? Yes, indeed. So my journey begins here. This image on the right are my parents. And when you look at this image, I assume that you see what's the image of a loving couple. The story that you don't know, though, when you look at this image, is the fact that this man pictured here on the right, my dad, was a prominent Roman Catholic priest in the city of Boston while he was alive, which meant that for the entirety of my life, I had this duality of experience, where in certain spaces, I could see him as my father, and in other spaces, I knew I had to be a hidden child. I had to claim that there was no dad. I didn't know who he was. And this woman to the left, my mom's bipolar schizophrenic. And she suffered from bipolar schizophrenia my entire life, which meant for me, as a single child growing up with her, I was responsible for ensuring that she was on her meds, for helping out around the house, for making sure that bills were paid, and that we had food. My parents are also, you see a Haitian flag here, because they came to the U.S. from Haiti in the 50s to escape the dictatorship that was there. And as a child growing up, I was always proud of my Haitian heritage. Proud of the flag, proud of the food, proud of the culture, proud of my extended family. I have 5 uncles, 3 aunts, and too many cousins to name. But that changed for me when I was in the 4th grade. Right around the time when it was important in my development to start making sense of who I was outside the household, I encountered a line of thinking from my teachers in school that really messed me up. They would say things to me like, "You don't look Haitian. You don't sound Haitian. You don't smell Haitian. So how could you be Haitian?" Now, while I did not know what a Haitian was supposed to look like, sound like, smell like, I got the message pretty loud and clear that it was not okay for me to be Haitian. And from that point on, really until adulthood, I stopped declaring that color. I just told people I was African American. Because when I did, they didn't ask any questions, and I could just fly under the radar. Now, what was challenging for me at this time was the fact that I didn't understand why I couldn't be myself in school or outside the household. And I started to ask questions about the materials that we would utilize in school. Why weren't there any brown people in the books? Why didn't we talk about my culture? Why didn't we talk about people who looked like me? Why did no one who looked like me work at the school? And I was met by my teachers with comments like, "Shut up, put your head down, don't be a disruption, or we're going to send you to the principal's office." And this confused me. School used to be a safe space, and I used to think it was okay to be who I was, but I was getting a different message. Now, I grew up in the 90s, and I didn't have Google or social media or the internet, but I knew that when adults wouldn't share with me answers that I needed, that there was a source I had to go to give me information. And for me, at that point in time, since I didn't have the internet, was television. So when I turned to television, to find examples of people who looked like me and to find my place in the world, it confused me even more. Because the images that I saw were not the communities that looked like mine. They weren't households that were like mine. There were always households that had 2 parents. The issues that came up were not issues that I thought were real issues when I thought about what happened in my community. There were always images of the suburbs, and this thing kept on bubbling up in my head. Where are the people who look like me? Why aren't we represented? Do we matter? Now, when I did see images of brown men on TV, they usually fell in one of 3 categories. Star athlete like Michael Jordan. And I knew I couldn't be that. I thought I had still playing basketball, but I knew I wasn't going to be like MJ. A comedian like Eddie Murphy, and while I thought I was funny and I had a lot of jokes, I didn't think I was funny enough to pursue life as a comedian. Or a tough guy, like Tupac Shakur. Now, the last image, the tough guy, that resonated with me. It resonated with me because in my community, when I saw tough guys, they were always courageous, and it seemed like nobody bothered them. They could say what they wanted to say about whatever they wanted to say, and they seemed like they were the only ones who were safe. Now, a fascinating thing for me when I got that idea in my head of, this is who it's going to be, it seemed like the teachers in school also got that message. Because I would start hearing things like, you're just going to be a statistic. You're going to wind up dead or in jail. And it would infuriate me. And I made up in my mind that it was going to be my job to push back against teachers and make sure that everybody in any classroom I was in would know that the adults were fake, that they were paid to say that they cared, but they didn't really care, and they didn't really know anything about us. And at this point in my life, I was only in school because I had to be. In the city of Boston, where I grew up, I knew that I legally had to be in school until I turned 16. And then when I was 16, I could drop out. And I was just waiting for that time to come because I was tired of being in a building that didn't feel welcoming and being surrounded by adults who didn't really care and couldn't ask questions about why I wasn't represented or why me and my friends weren't seen. Now, to add insult to injury, around the same time, but around that time, to add insult to injury, I also didn't feel safe in the community outside of school. To quick quote a statistic from the ACLU, that people of color account for about 75% of those stopped by the Boston police. 63% of them being black in the city, with less than 25% of the population was black. And I'll share with you a quick anecdote about my experiences with this as a middle schooler. You know, I believe I was about 13 years old playing basketball with friends during the summertime. And we returned to one of my friends' houses. It was hot, we were on this shoot, we were doing what teenage boys do. We were joking about who had smooth moves, we were joking about who broke whose ankles, who looked silly, and who really got it done. And in the midst of our conversation, one of my friends, his name was LeBron, he gets up and he says, yo, there's a D-Tech cruiser at the top of the street, we gotta get out of here. For those of you who don't know what a D-Tech cruiser is, that was just slang for an undercover police detective car. Now, I didn't know why LeBron thought we needed to leave because we were playing basketball, we weren't doing anything. It's the summertime, it was hot, there was no AC in that building. My assumption was, let's just chill out here. It's gonna be all good. My friends thought differently though. And what they shared with me was that I would learn my lesson because they were definitely gonna get out of the way. But I was sure nothing's gonna happen, we're not doing anything. And they went inside. And as soon as they got into the building and the door closed, that cruiser sped quickly down the street and then stopped eerily in front of the street, in the middle of the street right in front of where I was at. Now, as soon as it stopped, 4 burly officers jumped out of the vehicle and grabbed me, pinned me on the hood of a red Honda Civic. And I didn't know what was going on. I remember feeling the heat from the hood of that car on my face. As they patted me down and shouted at me, where were the drugs, where were the guns? I guess the car was unlocked because they opened the doors and started rummaging through the car and started shouting at me, you know, where did I steal this from? What do I have stashed here? Then I remember feeling my leg kicked open from underneath me, my belt being unbuckled, and they performed an anal cavity search right there on the street. I remember feeling humiliated, not understanding why this was happening, having a hard time breathing, because my neck and face was pinned against that hot, red Honda Civic hood. And then I remember, just as quickly as it happened, my belt and pants quickly were pulled up, they were in the cruiser and they were gone. And as soon as they were, all I could do was sit on the concrete and just feel humiliated, frustrated, ashamed. My friends came out the house and some of them had some unsavory things to say about police. Some of them had jokes for me about whether or not I had finally learned my lesson. I couldn't say anything. I was frustrated. I was mad about what had happened. I was mad at my friends for not helping out. And I was mad at myself because I knew that there was nothing that they could do to help out. So once I could get myself together, I picked myself off the ground, walked down the street, got on the number 28 bus, and went home. Can I proceed? Yes, please. Now, about this point in time in my life, I felt like there was a conspiracy that my teachers were in on, a conspiracy that I thought the media was in on, and that the police was in on as well. And that conspiracy was that there was a narrative written about people like me. And the only way I could encapsulate what that felt like which through the language of this poem that I've written entitled You Ain't Nothing. Survival's a vicious game. Grab a tool, join the gang. Brown boy, you ain't nothing. In the hood you'll remain, consumed by the anger and pain till your blood's pouring out and on the concrete you lay slain. Brown boy, you ain't nothing. Join the team, hold heat, make a life in these streets as a predator. Superman, your work is worthless, drop out. Life ain't for you, drop out. This world hated you before you were born, drop out. Brown boy, you ain't nothing. You weed-smoking shadow dweller, pariah of society, be angry because we hate you. Fear us because we fear you. You'll never become anything because we don't want you to, and neither do you. Brown boy, you ain't nothing. Can I proceed?
Yes, indeed.
Now, fast forward next year, I was at a point in my life where I felt like I had no choice but to accept the narrative that was written about me. And I was sure that that's who I needed to be. I was a tough guy with no consideration for school, and I knew that I just had to figure life out on the streets. This image of me, I don't know if you can figure out who I am. I'm the guy with the V hat that kind of looked cool, because that's what we do when we're in high school, right? This picture was taken on a day that I was skipping school in an abandoned house that was our playhouse, our clubhouse in the community. And not too long after this picture was taken, I got a phone call that changed my life. My friend DeRon that I had mentioned in the previous story, a couple of slides before, I got a phone call that he got murdered in front of his house over his white Air Jordan sneakers. And it crushed me. It crushed me not because he was the first person I knew who was a victim of street violence. I had known others. But he was the first person that was in my inner circle that I saw every day that I wouldn't see anymore. Something that I failed to mention about DeRon as well is what his father did for them. His father was a lieutenant detective in the Boston Police. And as far as my friends were concerned, if anybody was going to survive and make it, it was going to be DeRon because of what his dad did. And the fact that, although his dad was that decorated lieutenant detective, and he still got murdered in front of his house over sneakers, made us feel like he could not be safe, that none of us could be safe. In my adolescent mind at the time, the only way that I could be safe outside of my household was if I armed myself. So that's what I did. I purchased a gun on the street, and I took it with me everywhere I went. Can I proceed?
Yes, indeed.
Now, luckily for me, not too long after I purchased that gun, I got arrested in downtown Boston. And when I got arrested with it, I remember a flash in my mind of all the words that adults had said to me about becoming a statistic, about winding up dead or in jail, or about not making it. And I remember being in the back of that police cruiser and feeling a depression that I had never felt before, and a heaviness that I had never felt since, and thinking to myself, oh gosh, I've finally done it. I lived up to all these expectations that these adults had of me. And I remember looking in front of the cruiser with tears in my eyes, and saying to the officers that were there, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. And hearing them laugh and chuckle back at me, well, you blew it. You're going away for a long, long time. Can I proceed?
Yes, indeed.
Now, I'm going to pause on telling my story for a little bit, so that you have an opportunity to reflect on your own. I'm going to ask you to take the next 5 minutes, if needed. I know we've been sitting for a while, to stretch, reflect, and discuss with an elbow partner, who you are. And I'm going to ask you to speak your truth. If it's helpful for you, there's a hashtag up there. You can tweet at me. We are going to play a little bit of Lady Gaga for the next 5 minutes. And that will be our timer. When the song is done, we will resume. Now, the slide that's up on the board, up on the projector, says, what is social justice? And this slide is up here because if we are authentically committed to equitable practices, we have to wrestle with what social justice means. And for me, to think about social justice, we can give a round of applause. We can give a round of applause. you to think about social justice, I want you to think about 4 areas. Identity. Your ability really to think about what your identity is and to have a positive understanding about negotiating what it's like to work with other human beings who have different identities than you do. Diversity. People talk about diversity all the time, but what does it really mean to wrestle with people who are different genders, different belief systems, different racial backgrounds, different sexual identity than you? Justice. When we think about justice, I want you to think about power and privilege and how we wrestle with those two things. And it's important as educators that we take action related to social justice. Now, a question that I want you to think about as you consider your work over the course of this school year is how you will take action. Parent involvement. When you think about your back to school nights, are you taking into consideration, are they set up in a manner that allows them to feel authentically welcoming for all the families that are within your community? When you think about different activities that go on at your school, that might be hallmark traditions. Do you have father and daughter dances? Does a father and daughter dance provide a barrier for some of our kiddos who don't have dads in their lives? Do you have father and son baseball games? Same thing. Are you thinking about the kiddos who get shut down or excluded, or they have trauma that's triggered as a result of things like this? When you think about your policies, when you think about your planning, when you think about hiring practices, curriculum, school schedule, the expectation around extracurricular activities, are we taking into consideration our learners who don't look like us, our learners who've had different journeys than us, and our learners who've experienced trauma? If we have not, then we're excluding them, we're shutting them down. They might show up and be in our classroom spaces, but we're giving them permission to not be present because we're sending a message that they don't count, because we haven't taken into consideration what their journey is. And we haven't taken into consideration what their backgrounds are. Now, a friend of mine, Elise Ventura, she would frame this work around social justice and direct connection to identity development. And she has a framework that I'll share a little bit with you about. That's really about you wrestling with how comfortable are you dealing with folks of different races, different classes, gender, ability level, sexual identity, gender identity, and language. And she has a framework that has this spectrum of 1 to 6. And it starts at a 1. Are you at a place where you are repulsed or have fear of people who don't look like you? I.e., as a teacher, are you afraid of those kids that are in front of you? Do you have judgments in your mind when they walk in the door and you hear who their parents were? Have you heard stories about their older siblings? And because of that, you have fear of them? Do you feel sorry for them? Because you feel like your life experience was better than theirs. So when you see them, you say, oh, poor them. It's not their fault they don't have that. It's not their fault they don't understand that. Are you at a place where you're saying that you don't see color and you don't see difference? That's dangerous too. Or have you been able to move to a place of acceptance? Understanding that we share this world with people who are different than us. And whether or not we understand what their journeys are, their experiences are just as powerful and valuable as us. Is there admiration there? Do you have admiration for their tenacity and their resilience? Have you actually wrestled with what it means to become an ally? If we think about, I'll push back to the previous slide, if we think about our identity development for the sake of social justice, we need to figure out where we locate ourselves in these areas so that we can interrupt a vicious cycle of providing students with low expectations based on our view of them. I know last year you all heard from Tyrone Howard, and he talks about the distinction between a pedagogy of plenty and a pedagogy of poverty. Are we giving ourselves unintentionally excuses on holding students to low expectations and low standards because we haven't wrestled with our own sense of uncomfortability in dealing with people who are different than us? Now, this impacts our students in a bunch of different ways. I'm a big fan of Zaretta Hammond's work, Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain. And I would argue that if you fall on a 1, 2, or 3 on Elise's spectrum, if you have fear of your students, if you have pity of them, if you claim that you do not see their backgrounds and their identities, then you unfortunately are in a circumstance in which you are, if we invoke Zaretta Hammond's framework, creating dependent learners in your practice, or what they say in my school building, creating students who have a sense of learned helplessness, who are always dependent on you to tell them what to do, who get stuck whenever they have a new task and can't move on unless they get your approval, who can't seem to complete tasks without scaffolds, who will sit possibly, if stuck, until you notice that they are stuck, if you notice that they are stuck, and who for some reason don't seem to retain any information. That's not the fault of the student. That's as a result of our perspectives of them and us giving ourselves permission to not push them hard. I serve as a consultant for DESE, and when I go in and look at schools' data, I usually start by looking at demographic information on who's in the category of taught to partial and who's in the category of taught to does not meet. And I can figure out within 2 or 3 minutes of looking at that data whether or not that school or district has an expectations problem. And here's how. When I look at the category of who's taught to partial, there's a message that's sent to me. There was a standards-based curriculum that was utilized. How do I know that? Because the kids were able to answer some of the questions. So there was definitely a standards-based curriculum that was utilized, but they were taught to the low end of the spectrum, or the low end of the standard, because someone might have been afraid of them. Someone might have pitied them. They have a hard life. I can't push them this hard. I'm going to modify this assignment. They can't write at that level. Or someone's assuming that they don't see their background. It means that instead of us saying that we believe that our kids can really get to a place of success, due to our blinders, if we leave them unchecked, we always ensure that that trajectory is lower than it needs to be. Now, if we are able to push ourselves in our learning, so we're able to get to the higher end of that spectrum, will we accept the fact that there are differences in our classrooms, and differences amongst our colleagues, and differences in the community? If we're able to get to that place of admiring the fact that there are people who walk, live, and breathe in this earth, this planet, differently than us, and get to the place of becoming allies, then again, invoking Zaretta Hammond's framework, we can authentically create what are called independent learners. Students who rely on the teacher to carry some of the cognitive load, but just temporarily. They're just relying on you to introduce new information, but then they will run out and do it on their own. They have strategies to process and tackle new tasks. They regularly attempt new tasks without scaffolds. They have their own cognitive strategies. And these are kiddos that we can ensure are being taught to meet or exceed, and that are really able to shine and get to success. I just want to put emphasis on the fact that this is not just about our kiddos, but it's about us and our perspectives of them. Because our perspectives of them determine what we do when we have them in the classroom. Because we make decisions about how we teach them, what strategies we use, what groupings we put them in, or not. And we make decisions about how much we're going to push them or not based on our ability to see them. So this is very, very important. Now, this idea going beyond access, we can flesh it out even further. I'll bring it back to those first 3 questions, and there are a couple of others that I've added onto this slide. But again, are we valuing impact in and through the lives of our students more than we're valuing adult intentions? Is it a circumstance where we are saying that this is about our kids, but it's really about us? Because we want to pat ourselves on the back because we worked hard. Or we want to pat ourselves on the back because we came to a community and we're giving back. Guess what? Everybody in this room, you have your degrees, you've already made it through school. It's about our kids. They are our customers. Education is one of the few places in our nation where the customer's not right. The only way we can ensure that we are valuing impact over intentions is by hearing from our customers. Education is one of the few places in the world where someone can say, hey, I have a peanut allergy. And the person might say back to them, so what? This is what you're getting. My curriculum, my content's one size fit all. I don't see the differences. That doesn't work. We need to make sure that we're thinking about what our kids' experiences are and how our decisions directly impact their lives. We need to ensure that there is visibility of the learners. Do they see themselves reflected in the spaces? When I go into schools and I do equity audits, it's a fascinating thing. Oftentimes, I will step into school communities where their population is 80, 90% students of color. When I look at what's on the wall, there'll all be images of dead white men. I won't see images of women. I won't see images of anybody who's had a disability. I won't see images of brown people. When you step into a space and that's what you see, it sends you a message. It sends you a message that either says, hey, they know that there are people like me who live, breathe, and exist in this world that have been successful. So there's artifacts of that up. Or it sends you a message that this might not be a place that's really welcoming for someone who looks like you. Are we sure that the work is authentically relevant? This again reinforces the fact that we need to have relationships with our students, and we need to know about who they are, what their life experiences are. Because relevancy changes on a regular basis. With social media, with the internet, that changes fast. What's important to kids today, during the 1920 school year, is not going to be what was important to them last year. And if we're not able to show them that we know who they are and we have a sense of what their world is, they're going to know when we say that we care that we don't. That we could not do our homework and dig hard enough into what their life experiences were for us to make an authentic connection. In my experience in school, that's what I felt and that's what I knew. We need to make sure that we identify and eliminate these barriers and that we optimize voice and choice, that we're ensuring that we're hearing from our kiddos. Now, I didn't really get to dig into the Ready for Rigor framework. When we're able to do this work, we're able to do what Zaretta Hammond believes is our way of pushing kids towards becoming independent learners. We're able to wrestle with our sense of awareness of our background first and the impact of our background first. When I have conversations with folks about race, you'd be fascinated. There are a lot of folks who will say, white's not a race. Yes, it is. You need to wrestle with that. You need to wrestle with what the privileges are that come with your identity. You need to understand the distinction between other folks who have different identities. And you need to make sense of how culture directly impacts how the brain receives and processes new information. It's not just the social thing. Our brains are hardwired to make sense of whether or not someone accepts our identities when we enter into spaces. It's one of the ways that we determine whether or not we should be on guard or whether we should be safe in a space or can be safe in a space. If we do that, we can start to develop learning partnerships with our students. Build relationships and create environments that communicate to our students that school is not something that's being done to them, but something that's being done for and with them. We can invoke information processing strategies that help our kiddos learn and process and move at a quick rate. And we can authentically create classroom communities and school communities that feel like they're communities of learners, that include the teacher. Like we learn from our students as they learn from us. Now, another quick reflection I want you to do before we wrap, and we're going to play a little bit of Billie Holiday as inspiration. I want you to wrestle with this question. How do we design systems that remove all of the barriers? And again, you can discuss this with people that are around you. If you are a social media person, the hashtag beyond access, you can post, you can write. Whatever happens that helps trigger your thinking, I want you to wrestle with some of this. How do we design systems that remove barriers for all? If you're a classroom teacher, think about your classroom. If you're a curriculum coordinator, think about your department. But how do we design systems that remove barriers for all? And remember, this starts with you. This starts with your ability to wrestle with how comfortable or uncomfortable are you when you deal with human beings who are different than you. Same as before, once the Billie Holiday song is done, we will reconvene. Now, before we wrap up, we're going to move back to my story, and we're going to get to what I call the journey to being better. Now, when I started this presentation, I shared with you that I believe this stuff, not because of the books that I've read, not because of the book I wrote, not because of workshops that I've gone to. All those things have been helpful, but I believe it due to life experience. I shared with you what my journey was up until I began high school, and it wasn't a good one. There was actually something I left out of that journey, though. I forgot to tell you that although I'm a middle school principal now, I was expelled from 3 middle schools. So just recap. When I shared with you my journey before we got to that pause point, now I was a young man with felony gun charges, the secret child of a priest, with a mom who has schizophrenia, bipolar, and I was expelled from 3 middle schools. And my life turned around in high school. And it turned around in high school because I encountered a school that was different than any type of school I encountered before. The first time I encountered a school where I felt like I was welcomed. where it didn't feel like the walls were sterile and it was some type of jail or hospital facility. I encountered a school where for the first time there were educators who looked like me. There's a lot of men in your audience, so y'all doing a good job, but it was the first time for me when I went to high school where I had male teachers. And I encountered a school where I was treated like I wasn't just a number. I was not an easy kid, because I didn't want to be there. But they worked hard to ensure that they cared, not just because they said they did. Because when people would tell me they cared, I would look them in their face and look back at them and say, you get paid a lot of money to say that. If you don't bother me, I won't tell the rest of the students that I know it's a lie. It's your job to tell me that you care, but I'm gonna back away. I went to a school or a school community where all of the information was relevant. Whether we did math or science, or whether we were in ELA class, there was always a direct through line that connected what was happening in school to the world outside of school. And light bulbs started to go off. For the first time, I realized that my education would provide me with tools to make sense of the scary world outside of school. And for the first time, I realized I had a voice, I had an opinion on things. And it completely transformed my experience. It set a fire on me, in me, that made me want to take school seriously. It transformed my trajectory. Instead of being that kiddo with the gun charges who had 3 expulsions on him, who showed up with a 1.6 GPA, it led me to becoming a class president. It sent me on a trajectory towards, an Ivy League education. And it sent me all over the world doing hip hop projects with gypsies in Holland, working for Senator Kerry, and ultimately to my position now founding a middle school in the city of Cambridge. And I share all that, not to brag about some of the things that I've accomplished, but to just put emphasis on the fact that there's no such thing as a throwaway kid. And no matter how challenging some of the students are who are in your classrooms this year or who you've had last year, you cannot predict what their future will be. Sometimes I make a joke of it and I tell people that it's so significant that we don't give up on kids no matter what their circumstances may be, because they might become your boss someday. So I just want to encourage you, as you prepare to begin your work to launch this school year, please keep in mind that the kids that are in your classrooms, they're somebody's loved one. Somebody has entrusted you with their lives with the faith that you will do for them what you would do for your children, for your nieces and your nephews, for your godchildren, for the kids in your lives that you love. And it means that you have to wrestle with some of your blind spots. You have to model some authentic fragility and wrestle with how comfortable or uncomfortable are you with certain groups of students. No shame, blame, or judgment, because if you can't name it, you can't work on it. And just because you don't name it doesn't mean that the kids don't know. They're perceptive. You are the first reality TV show. They come in here for 180 days and they just watch you. You're laughing, but it's a scary thing. They know by the tenor of your voice if you're telling the truth or not. They know by your facial expressions because they look at them all day, whether you're telling the truth or not. They know who the adults have drama with what other adults. They know they do. You need to be aware of this. I'm saying this because sometimes it's something that we forget as educators. But if we can't wrestle with that, and we can't work on the realness that's behind the scene, the real human being that lives behind that educational persona, we cannot impact the kids who authentically need us. Because the ones who see our hypocrisy don't trust us. And if they're as bold as I was, they'll let you know. And that might hurt your feelings. But I'm sorry, they're telling the truth. So it's important that you wrestle with these things so that you're able to ensure that you're not a barrier in their lives. Because again, you can't predict their future. And they might go on to become the people that we need to impact the community and to change our society. Because ready or not, there's going to be a time when they're making decisions for me and all of you. And I want to make sure that they're not making terrible ones for me. And I want to make sure that I'm not on their list if they're like, these educators, no money for school when I can vote because they didn't do nothing for me. Because that happens. In closing, I'm going to leave you with a poem. And I'll just read it. I'm a hip hop artist, so I get asked to like put clips of my music videos and stuff. But I'm kind of feeling a little bashful, so I'm going to just read the poem. instead of showing you the video. You can Google if you want. But the poem is entitled Good Enough, and it's inspired by the words of one of my favorite authors, Ta-Nehisi Coates. And it goes, the inequity of a privileged eye judges those such as I, no matter how hard or how reformed or how we try. Yet our humanity is not defined by their inability to accept our fragility. So the only choice is to authentically be ourselves. Leaving is not an option. And if it gets better, it'll only be through our resilience, is manifested through our willingness to stay and persevere. Every storm has an end, and the night may have come, but the sun, my friends, it will return and reappear. Thank you very much.
Just remember, we're one big reality show. So we want to take we're going to allow everybody to take their cell phones out, and so if everybody who has a cell phone could take their cell phone, we want you to. We're going to ask you what one word from the presentation we just heard resonates with you as crucial to the work of promoting equity and inclusion for all students. What you need to do is text Holyoke 374 and the word, one word, to 22333. You will start to see the responses pop up. So again, you're going to text Holyoke 374 and your word, the one word that resonates with you, to 22333. I'll be very impressed if some people don't have their cell phones with them. Yeah. Okay, again, it is text Holyoke 37. All right, it is full. I'm not sure why there's only a few words. We thought we'd try it. May not exactly work as we expected. We had 700 responses. Maybe it got flooded all at the same time. You can see some of the words that people shared. We do want to point out that we are going to ask you to discuss back at your schools some of the themes in the presentation once you go back to school sometime in the first month of the school year. And we're going to ask you to reflect on the following questions. What is one way in which you, your team, your school are supporting students to become independent learners? And what is one way that you are inadvertently supporting students to be dependent learners? And then as we launch into the school year, what is one action you could take to improve your practice to provide culturally responsive learning experiences that support students to become more independent as learners? And then finally, we want you to talk about what's one way in which school or district leaders can support these actions. So the book, Zaretta Hammond's book that he referenced is one that we strongly encourage school teams to begin to dive into. We've begun to read it as a district team, and it's really rich around implications for what the work would look like in classrooms and in schools about ensuring that our students are truly independent learners who have access, who are truly included and have access to the kinds of learning that we all know or we all believe that they should be able to achieve. So you'll have those opportunities to discuss at your schools during the first month of the year. So with that, we're going to transition to we're going to end with a spirited note, and some people can't help themselves banging drums throughout the whole presentation. All right? So we're going to call on individual schools, and I have a set of judges over here from the central office. They cannot vote for themselves. The central office did not win. All right? Now, I will point out the winning team will get a full breakfast, not a continental breakfast, a breakfast with meat potatoes, and eggs. All right, so here we go. We're gonna start with the central office this year. All right, central office. Are you ready? That's pretty embarrassing, I would say. Where's Donahue School? Donahue, you're on. Is that the sound a dolphin makes? All right, Ian White School. Okay, Kelly School. You know what? You get some new windows, doors, and ACs, and you gotta look. This will be the loudest. Holyoke High School. I don't know what kind of TV you've been doing the last few days. Yeah, it wasn't a chance. Hey, what does Kelly School want to say? It's fun. They're just disqualifying you because it's not a chance. All right, Lawrence School. Morning school, I'm disappointed your principal wasn't moving enough for this. He's trying to hide in the back. All right. This school has been playing instruments since they arrived. Next school. You guys gonna do anything? Okay, STEM Academy. I don't think the M in STEM stands for music. All right, Sullivan School. With the red shoes, she's a graduate of Holyoke High School. And I can see she must have a nice red to, all right, we still have one school left, Veritas Prep. What? you can please consult. I don't even know what to make of it.
The Sullivan School.
Honestly, this group doesn't follow directions. And I know who the leader is of this school. All right, so. All right, guys, thank you all for the spirit and energy. We're going to end with our annual video. You said you were embarrassed to do your rap. I'm super embarrassed to show what's on this video. This year, videographer Mike Hines and I went big time. We went big time. And we consulted with Bevan Brunel. Stand up, Bevan Brunel. She was our choreographer. She's our high school theater arts teacher. And many of her students, she knew we needed help quickly. She brought some students and some staff members in to the performance. We took the video out of the car this year. We eliminated the karaoke and went cowboy style. Enjoy the pathway down Old Town Road to the first day of school through the eyes of one of our students. Enjoy and have a wonderful school year, everybody.
Yeah, I'm gonna pack my bag and head to school. I'm gonna learn and learn some more. I'm gonna pack my bag and head to school. I'm gonna learn and learn some more. I put my notebook in my bag, pencils are attached. Wish you had a jag, nothing you should match. Another year of school, weather's getting cool. Here in Hampton County, it's ready for school now. Can't nobody stop me, no. I'm gonna reach my goals, yeah. Can't nobody stop me, no. I'm gonna reach my goals, yeah. Sharp for less than 5, you gotta be on time. Grab some food in class, it doesn't have to rhyme. Time to pour some clubs, be nice to the subs. And after that, the polio. It's the fire trail. Can't nobody stop me, no. I'm gonna reach my goals, yeah. Can't nobody stop me. I'm gonna reach my goals, yeah. Gonna pack my bag, learn and learn some more. Gonna pack my bag, head to school. Learn some more. Work hard and be kind till you get a gold star. Working on your money like Chris Rock and man gets stars. Make this one your best year. Set a goal star.